it's really the feel good part of the job for me.
That's awesome. This is our third week of our How to Summer series, basically talking about lease option real estate investing. And tonight we're going to be talking specifically about how to help families in home ownership. All right, welcome here. So tonight we're going to be talking about how to help families get into home ownership. And this is just building on the whole idea of lease options, lease option real estate investing. And the last couple of weeks, first of all, we talked about uh, how to put together a no money down deal. Okay, so just a whole idea of how do you do these deals with no money. And we focused around the lease option strategy. Last week, we talked about taking that idea of no money down deals and starting to scale it, right? And we had Dave on, and Dave shared how they got up to, well, they're over 10 properties now, but basically without the banks and very little money down, using $100 check. And so tonight we're shifting gears a little bit. We're moving away from, acquiring properties, but we're going to talk about related to that, how you help families get into home ownership. So why is this an important thing? Well, it's important because uh, there's so much opportunity for this. So I've been doing lease options and rent owns since 2010, and there's always more people to help than what I've got time for or what people have time for, right? And when you're learning to scale, you realize that there's just so much opportunity out there. So you might say, well, who are these people that need help with getting into home ownership? Why don't they just put 5% down and get a mortgage? Well, that's a great question. And the reason why that is that there are so many people that either have poor credit or they don't have enough money to put down. So those are the two most common things that I see with people. So we're not talking about focusing on low income, helping low income people get into housing. That's not what this is about. Most people will make a conclusion that doing a rent to own and helping a family get into home ownership means that you're helping low income families. Now, that is a strategy. That's not what I'm focusing on today. So I'm talking about people who make enough money annually to afford mortgage payments. So people who can afford mortgage payments, right? If they rent, and depending on your demographic, your market, of course. If someone can afford a rent payment of between $1,500 and $3,000, they can usually afford a mortgage payment in that area. I know there's exceptions, but so for here in my home city, the average house price is 350. So if you're making 70 grand, you may not afford a $350,000 house, but you can afford a $250,000 house, right? So these are the type of people that we're helping. So these are people who've had, have made mistakes with their credit, and hopefully they are repairing them. But it's also people who, lost a job, and then maybe they lost a house, or maybe they had to live off of credit for some time and had a hard time paying it back, or health issues. That's also a very common one. Also, people who are new into a business, right? The banks aren't looking at them for at least 2 years until they've got enough financials. That's a big demographic of who I help here locally. And people who come from other countries, they want to set up here. Unless if they've got greater than 50% of the purchase price to put down, the bank's not going to lend to them. And so they've also got to go through, the status of getting their citizenship, all that sort of stuff. But we can start that process early and help them build their credit score, because even people who are new to Canada are paying, here in Winnipeg, $2,000 a month in rent. So these are the type of people that we help, and the list goes on, right? So if you got questions, write them down. Make sure you got a piece of paper and a pen or pencil. Jot down some notes or your tablet, whatever. because there's going to be stuff that you're going to have questions for that might automatically get answered a little bit later, as well as we're going to have time a little bit later for a Q&A. Now, with writing down your thoughts and stuff, there's going to be aha moments that pop into your head. Either it's something that has been said or has caused you to think about doing a certain deal this way or that way, or how to help someone get in home ownership. And you need to write those things down. Those are little magic moments that sometimes, you might say that, oh, if it was that good, I'll remember it later. Not always the case. Write it down, because that could be something that you could act on later. I'm also excited for tonight because we've got Dave back this week, and he's going to be sharing some of his experiences helping families get into home ownership. How to find great tenants, how to find great clients, how to find a great home. And it doesn't have to be in that order. And then we're going to talk about baking the cake. You're going to wonder what that is, but it'll make sense to you when we get there. And then finally, some next steps. What I want to do real briefly is I want to just share something with you that I'm launching. And it is called Co-llab. And it's a new type of mastermind that I'm super pumped about, that is going to help you along in this journey. So stick around to the end, and we're going to come back to that. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. Here we are, and we're going to start with finding great clients. Okay, so most of these pictures are real pictures. If you can guess which ones are the one or two that are Photoshop, good job, or not Photoshop, stock photos. So this is, I've got 3 avatars for my rent-own company that are people that I focus on. And it's not about ethnicity. It's about, so this picture here is a young family. So so I've got 3 avatars. This is the first avatar that we spend most of our time helping get into home ownership. The second one, I don't have pictures for these, is a young couple that are wanting to get into home ownership, but they can't yet. And the third one is kind of a empty nester type couple. And you might be saying, why would an empty nester, So an empty nester, is someone that all their kids have moved on, or maybe they never had any kids, but they maybe had a house and they lost it in some fashion or another, or they've had a massive shift in their life. Oftentimes divorce is a huge proponent that gets clients into my door, right? It wrecks their credit. They lose a ton of money, all that sort of stuff. And so, yeah, empty nesters are a demographic that I've done a fair bit of work with. So with these great clients, first of all, I'm going to touch base on how to find them. Well, first of all, what you need to do is you need to get the word out there. If you've watched the previous 2 videos, I talk a lot about taking action and just making movement, right? That's how you gain momentum. And so getting the word out there is key. So how I get the word out there is everything from networking. Wherever I go, I talk about what I do when I'm asked, right? I don't go out and just talk to people and, hey, how you doing? Hey, you want to know what I'm doing these days? I don't do that. But I'll chat with people, and it's a very natural thing for people to say, what have you been up to? And so I'll give them my elevator pitch. Depending on who they are, I'll give them an elevator pitch about investing or about rent-own. And they're often like this. I've got an elevator pitch that's, 15 seconds long, that just opens the door to discussion, that if they're interested in investing or if they're interested in helping people get into home ownership, then they'll be interested and they might ask more. If not, no worries, we can move on. So networking, obviously, having a website, a Facebook page is super easy and a super way to get out there that you can be interacting on, because you can go live on it. You can send messages, reach out to people, and it doesn't cost you anything. Websites can be a real pain because, well, what platform do I use? And how, now if you got a website, great. But if you've started to do a website for the first time, you know what I'm talking about. It's a bunch of work, a bunch of decisions you got to make through or walk through. And so getting out the word there, So Kijiji, Craigslist, depending on where you're at, some local online classified where people are looking for rentals. I typically focus in the rental category, not the for sale category, because, well, I won't get into that. If you got a question, I can answer that later. So those are key. Facebook Marketplace has been an amazing tool in the last 18 months. It's gotten so much better. These are all ways to get the word out there. So if you're on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, these are all fantastic ways to get the word out there, because what you can do is you can be looking at a house, or you can be working with your prospective rent-own client, a tenant buyer that you're going to help get in home ownership, and take a selfie with them. Now you can say, hey, can I take this photo? Or you can do what I do. If I didn't ask for permission to post it, but we just took a selfie for fun's sake, then I'll just put, like a smiley face on the picture. But that's how you get the word out. And you post it on your Instagram, and you go live, and you just get yourself out there, getting people to know. If you're nervous about that, then start with just one platform, but start doing something, right? So that's getting the word out there. And when you get the word out there, soon you're going to have people contacting you, right? Especially if you are on Facebook Marketplace and you've got a Facebook page, right? A really simple ad that says, hey, I'm helping families get into home ownership. If you've got a little bit of money to put down, I can probably help you, right? So that's just a really blank canvas. You're going to get lots of conversations, and that's great, because that's how you're going to get your practice. So that's how you get the word out there. Now, the important thing after that is talking to them. Talking to them is key, because you need to have this back and forth dialogue, right? We do business with people that we know, like, and trust. So you can't expect to hide behind email or texting and never really get to know the person, because I don't think I've done any rent-own deals where someone's given me $10,000 for a down payment without ever meeting me in person or talking face to face over Zoom or something like that. So you got to build rapport with people, and so you talk with them and you keep that conversation going. Okay, I'm going to kind of stop there, because I could talk for a long time with that. This next one, how to qualify them. This is really important, but this is a whole topic in and of itself, right? Because qualifying the tenant, the prospective tenant, includes just getting to know them, asking some really basic questions like, what's their income? How much do they owe in debt? How much do they have for a down payment? How many people? Asking a bunch of strategic questions, right? And then from there, when you start asking them for information, because you have to verify all this stuff, like send me your last year's T4 slip, send me your job letter, send me a reference, send me last year's notice of assessment from the CRA to confirm that you're making what you said you made last year, right? These are all things that essentially you need to know, because this is what's called underwriting, and this is what the banks do. So essentially you're helping prepare a family, and specifically one or two people who are going to be physically purchasing the property. You're helping them get ready for the bank, right? So you got to do your homework, and you want to serve them well. And so I go through a whole process of, how to do the background check, all the information. And then what I do is I get my mortgage broker to pull their credit for me. Now, I don't necessarily get my mortgage broker to do it now, because I'm able to do that, but it's a great way to get a mortgage broker, because they can give you insights that maybe you wouldn't see. And, how long do these people need to build or repair their credit score, right? So one of my students right now is talking with is it a couple, and they're new to Canada, and they want to start getting into home ownership now, even though they can't qualify for a mortgage yet, right? So talking with a mortgage broker and find out more, this person found out more information that, they've actually got a really good job and they're working remotely from their home country, but they're living here now in Canada. And so the income's going to keep coming in. So that's great. They've got some money to put down. Now it's just a process of putting it all together, like what I'm telling you here. So to find great tenant buyers in this video here that I'm showing you, the screenshot there, find great tenant buyers. It's about a 45-minute video, and I go into detail on how I go through that whole process of the information that I'm looking for from them, my own personal checklist that you can just copy, and it just goes through, reference checks, have they submitted their credit score, verification of income, all that stuff, all the way through, and including, and a very important one, which is, what's your gut feeling? Because really what you're doing is when you're finding great tenant buyers to help get into home ownership, you're going to have a relationship with these people for the next number of years. Do you want to have a relationship with these people? Because there's some clients that I've worked with that were, we just didn't fit, right? It was kind of abrasive and we just never really connected. And so for me as a business owner, I can pass on that, because if it's rough for me, it's probably going to be rough for them. And you want to get off to a really good start when you're helping a tenant buyer get into home ownership. So I won't go into much more detail now because I could talk for 45 minutes just on this one subject. So the link is there, youtube.com/creativeinvestoru. And if you look for that thumbnail, it'll be in there. All right. So finding great clients, that is in a nutshell how you find great clients. So you might be saying, well, you might say that seems really easy, or you might say that feels really complex, depending on how you look at it. What my goal here tonight with you is to give you an overview so that in your mind's eye, you can begin to imagine what this looked like. So those of you who are on here live with me or you're watching later, you clicked on this, you joined this for a reason. You're interested in lease options and you're interested in helping families get into home ownership. So there's this information that's in here that will help you. But if I go too deep in this, you'll get lost in the weeds. But I want you to be able to, like, if you've got a family in mind, maybe it's a couple, maybe it's an individual, maybe it's someone who you think might need this, now they're in your head and you're thinking, yeah, I could talk to them about this. I could ask them some questions and all that sort of stuff. And so this is designed to get you thinking, understand at a basic level so that you can go deeper, right? So you can put questions and comments below, and we can keep the dialogue going either here tonight in this live or on the YouTube video. All right, so moving right along, finding a great home. And so why I said before, finding great clients, I've got listed here first, and then find a great home. That is one way you can do it. And that is called tenant first lease option. And that's where you find a great tenant and then you find them a home, right? But you can also do house first, where you find a great home, it's vacant, maybe it's ready to go as is, it might be brand new, and the owner can't sell it. Or it might be a house that you find and you fix up, or it might be a house that's in rough shape, but there's great potential. And you might market that to somebody who's a handyman, right? There's all sorts of scenarios. So I've done both strategy, and I coach on both strategies. I've probably done more of these just because I've had a lot more homes come my way from what I call tired and frustrated landlords, TFLs. So let's dive into this a little bit. Okay, so find a great home. One of your own. You might have a home that you want to do this with. You might want to do it with a friend. You might find a TFL, right? A no money down. You could also do no money down with your friend. Find an investor or work with a realtor. Okay, so one of your own. What do you mean by that? So it could be that, you started off in a condo and you then bought a house, but you kept the condo. Okay, well, one of your own. So this could be where you do a lease option to a tenant buyer with one of your own properties, right? So it's not a great picture, but this is one of our own properties that we did this strategy on. I knew the property very well. So that was an opportunity for me to do it with one of my own properties. Now, I didn't do that early on. I actually did a no money down deal. Last week, that White House that I showed you, that was the first lease option I did. This was, I don't know, this is probably the 15th. I took one of my own properties that became vacant. So you can do it with one of your own, or maybe you are moving out of the city and you don't want to sell your house and you want to do this. So, okay, I think you get the idea there. Second one is with a friend. So this could be where it's like you're excited about doing real estate investing, and maybe your buddy is too, or your girlfriend, and uh, they're like, I have no idea what to do, and I'm busy with my day job. I love my day job. I'm an architect, and I don't have time to do this, Cam. But you seem to know what you're doing, and what if we ran one of these deals together? That happens a lot, where people express interest like that. So you could do it with a friend. Maybe that friend has got a rental property already that they might be heading in this direction where they're not enjoying working with tenants. So you could also find a tired and frustrated landlord. So this is one of the hundreds, if not thousands, of TFLs that I've spoken with over the years. I've blacked his eyes out so to keep him anonymous. But, here he is walking through this property. He's telling me all the headaches that he's experienced with this property. And so you could work a deal with, a tired and frustrated landlord. Last week, I showed you, that one grouping of houses that was, 5 houses. They're all about 100 years old. And that's fairly common here in Winnipeg, as long as the bones are good. But that was one TFL that I took 23 homes off of his hands over a number of years. And I've had other people where I've taken a number of properties, and sometimes they're a much newer house. Another one is an investor, right? And so this is, kind of a hybrid to what I was talking about, a friend. And, when you're giving your elevator pitch and people go, oh, I want to invest with you, right? And that was my first one. My friends became an investor. And this is so one of our students, Myron, and he got his buddy to invest with him. And so Myron was like, Cam, can you jump on a Zoom call with us? And so we spent about 20 minutes on a call, and this gentleman invested with Myron in a couple different ways from that one meeting. Honestly, Myron didn't need me there. Myron was great. He could have done it on himself, but hey, it worked out for us to jump on there. But that was a way for, him to get an investor. And then another way is a realtor, which is a real obvious one probably. But especially if you're doing tenant first, where you find a great tenant buyer and you've got the ability to purchase a property yourself, right? You've got, about 23% to put down, and you can get another mortgage or you can get a mortgage, then great. You find a great tenant buyer and you qualify them, and then you go out shopping with them with your realtor for a home. So when you start weaving these all together, you see that opportunities come together. So what I did was one time is I was looking for TFL. So I was on Kijiji at the time. This is like 10 years ago. And I found a FSBO, for sale by owner. And I got into the property and I negotiated a purchase price and some terms. So the purchase price, I can't remember the numbers, but it was good enough that I felt that I could move forward with it. And I had a couple clauses in the contract. So one was that at certain times I could bring in trades so I could get quotes on prices. Like before I bought it, not only before I bought it, but before um, my offer to purchase went conditionless, right? When you buy a property and you put conditions in, it might be, house inspection, and it might be subject to financing. Those are two very common conditions. But when you remove them, you can't back out of the deal, right? So I had just a few conditions, but one of them was a satisfactory inspection, and I gave myself, I think, 7 to 10 days, which is a long time. If you can get that, that's awesome. Most time people want like 1 or 2 days. So I was able to get it for 7 days. And also in there, I was able to show the property to trades as well as to potential renters, right? So that was great. And what was cool about this deal was he had a super bug in the backyard that was in really good shape, wasn't being used. I negotiated that into the deal as well. I got it under contract and I started showing it, and I showed it to a lot of people. So I put up an ad on Kijiji, showed this property. I said, if you've got 5 or 10,000 to put down, we can help you get into home ownership. And I took what I thought were the best shots of the property. And my goal was just to get people in there so that I can have conversations with them, find out what they're looking for, and do you like this property? It was a Saturday. I think I got it under contract like Monday or Tuesday. Saturday, I had several showings. I think I had 3 parties show up. 2 of them were kind of duds. And the third one was this couple that looked much like the first couple that I showed you, in that they were a young couple. They had 2 kids, and they're like, yeah, we're really interested in your program. We're not crazy about the neighborhood on this house. We're not sure if this will work, but could we work with you on a different house? So I was like, yeah, well, let's work towards that. So long story short, that house that I met them in fell through. I backed out of the deal for a couple of reasons. I didn't get the super beetle, so that was too bad. But this couple I ended up working with, and I did the pre-qualification, and then I sent them out with my realtor, and we found them a great house. So when you start to take action, what happens is what you think is a linear process of, okay, I'll do this, then that, then that, then that, and then I'm done. Life doesn't really work that way, nor does real estate investing. What happens is you take action, you learn something, you go, I could have done that differently. So you take another step, and all of a sudden it jumps forward, and then it kind of stalls. You get the idea. All these things connect together, but that's by taking action, right? That's like if I'm trying to go from Winnipeg to Minneapolis, when I cross the border going into the States, if the border is closed, any number of reasons, flood, that's a true one recently, or there's some activity at the border that's backed up or whatever. Oh man, there's no other way to get to Minneapolis. Like, that's how often people look at doing real estate deals, is they come at it one way. There's many other ways. So at the border, there's actually in 30 minutes to the west or 45 minutes to the east, there's 2 different border crossings. And there's even more further on. Okay, I'll go to the next border crossing, then I'll go across. And it's like, oh, now I'm in a different state than what I was planning. Now what do I do? It's right. You keep on going, right? I know I'm preaching to the choir, but sometimes people, we just don't think about how we expect everything. Like, we get frustrated when things aren't linear, and it's just not that way. And you got to get used to the fact that you just got to keep taking action. Okay, this was a roadblock. What are my choices? How can I do this, right? Kiyosaki says, how can I do this? And so all these things come together, and they'll help you find a great home that you can mix with a great tenant. Okay, so real quick here, Hannah asked, how do you get the word out when you have not done a rental deal? So I talked a bit about that. Also, being part of a network of people who are doing them that you can lean on. Now you can say, I'm working with people with, and you get to know a couple people, and, Dave's done 10 deals, Cam's done a couple hundred deals. I'm working with people, with 3 different people, they've done over the past 10 years, 400 of these deals. So that's who I'm working with. So that's how you start building some of your your cachet with people to help you doing that. So, and when you're paying the mortgage broker, it all depends. Typically, you're not paying them anything up front because they're hoping to get the tenant buyer a mortgage down the road. Um, so another good question: how do you know if old homes have good bones? So you need to get a property inspector, like get an inspection. And a great way to do that is to get, like, don't get these commercial ones that go in your house and they do a laundry list of this blind is not connected properly and this flooring is pulled up. You want to get really a type of building inspector, like, hire someone who's in construction, who's got lots of construction experience, and say, I need you to look at the foundation, the roof, the wiring, the bones. I don't care about paint color. I don't care about the color of the shingles, but those sort of things. Those are the type of people you want to get in there. So when I first hired my building inspector to do this, at first I really didn't like him because his job was to go into the property and point out everything that's wrong with the property. So the reason why I didn't like him, let me couch this. The reason why I didn't like him is because I was trying to wholesale a property here in Winnipeg that the potential buyers, right, other investors, brought in an inspector with them, which was great. That's a brilliant way to do it. There's nothing wrong with it. But for me, trying to sell the property, this guy's in there pointing out everything that's wrong with the property. And now what happened in that process, I learned a ton about the property that I wasn't aware of. And, but I ended up becoming friends with that guy because just because he does his job a certain way doesn't mean I can't have a relationship with him and like him and stuff. What he didn't realize that he did when I paid him every time for years and years, he actually taught me how to do my own inspections on properties. So I would say 85% of the time, I just inspect them on my own. If I need him and I need to pay the bigger dollar, I'll bring him in. But I've also got a couple other people to bring in that can help see stuff that I don't see. All right, so that's that on that, and let's keep moving along. So bake the cake. Well, what is that? Well, bake the cake. Little do you know about Dave. Dave loves to bake. No, actually, I don't even know if Dave loves to bake. But what I'm doing here is kind of with what we talked about and finding the clients, finding a great home, and really it's putting it together. And that's what I mean by baking the cake. And so, Dave, I'm going to invite you on now. Dave was on last week. It was awesome, really well received. And Dave's going to join us now as well. And Dave, welcome here. And so Dave's been doing this for several years now. As those of you who watched last week, Dave and his partner have done, 10 plus of these deals. And so, Dave, I want you to come in and share with us about your experience with really what I've just spent the last, 30 minutes putting this together. And what's your experience with getting families into homeownership?
Well, Cam, thanks for inviting me on again here. Finding tenant buyers is, well, maybe my favorite part. I really enjoy it because this is the chance for us to really help people. The tenant buyers, well, some of them have owned a home before, but most of them haven't. A lot of them just need some guidance and some education. And most of them are very, very thankful when you help them along this process. It's really the feel good part of the job for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And as far as finding tenant buyers, we've kind of tried a few different strategies as we went along here. Our best success rate has been basically putting a posting on a rental site for a rent to own program.
Mm-hmm.
You need to do lots of filtering because there's people who just see the pictures and click, is
Mhm.
this available? And you have to make sure they know it's actually a rent to own. So that's the first step. Uh, but once you do and you filter out the people who aren't aware of that and like rent to owns, then you can get on with your kind of qualification process and
Mhm.
also um, selling them on rent to own as well.
Mhm. Mhm. So, Dave, what do you find is working best for you guys right now in terms of finding the best tenant buyers?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we primarily use Facebook Marketplace for our advertising, and we ask a few very basic questions before we schedule a showing, essentially making sure that they have the down payment and the income to afford that specific property.
Mhm.
And then we usually do a showing, and that's where we kind of um, see the person because you really don't know until you meet that person, meet them
Mhm.
in person,
Mhm.
how they're going to be because it's so much more than just the numbers. Do they have the income and the down
Mhm.
payment?
Mhm. Yeah. What do you find? What do you guys find is the most common reason why your clients can't qualify for a mortgage?
Most common reason is likely because their credit took a hit after a separation.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm not sure why people feel the need to tank each other's credit on the way out the door, but typically that is the main reason. So yeah, you have people with good paying jobs that just
Mhm.
need a year or two to build up their credit.
Yeah.
And then second on the list is probably starting a new business or self-employed.
Okay. Okay. And what sort of experience have you had with new immigrants, new Canadians?
Yeah, we've had some outreach with our program. It just kind of hasn't worked out for whatever reason at the time, but they are typically very well qualified for the program. It's just, yeah, hasn't been able to come together yet, but that is an area that we want to start marketing to because they would be a great fit for our program and they're also, both ways,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
They would usually meet all of our qualifications and then some, and we get them into a house today rather than them waiting 2 years to get their PR or which is their permanent residency.
Yeah. Yeah. Other than Facebook Marketplace, what lead source or do you have a lead source as a person that has been great for referrals, either a mortgage broker, a realtor, or I don't know, like has any of
Yeah,
those been good for you?
we've had a few from realtors. That's
Okay.
probably our highest source of referrals.
Okay.
Not too many from our mortgage broker, although that's an area we really want to target because they should have the biggest list of people who are great but just can't qualify because of one little snag.
Yeah.
Um, then lots of just word of mouth. We do a lot of work on Facebook. We also have a video guy that shoots videos that my business partner Kyle and I are in, and we pump those quite a bit. And we've gotten referrals because where people say they follow us on Facebook.
It's awesome.
I found a house once by calling a reference for a tenant.
Well, that's interesting. Unpack that a little bit. That's pretty cool.
It's a different session though.
Well, but I mean, that's what I was talking about before. When you're taking action, other stuff falls in your lap sometimes.
Another thing we do there is we get so many people who respond to our ads thinking it's a rental, and instead of just saying no or say actually this is a rent to own, here's my 2 sentence elevator pitch.
Yeah,
You can go here to find out more.
yeah,
And just keep. Maybe they don't want to rent to own, but maybe their cousin needs a rent to own, or
yeah,
whatever, right?
exactly. Yeah. So you're taking what often can be a very frustrating thing when people don't really read the ad or anything. You just click on it, and you've got probably on a Word document a sentence or two that you wrote out previously. You copy and paste it, and that's another way of getting the word out there instead of just deleting them or anything, you know, or just ignoring them, right? You're taking that opportunity. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it definitely can get frustrating, but yeah, you're crazy not to just still pump the rent on. Because like I said, you don't know if it's them or their brother or their mom or their cousin or their
Exactly.
friend.
Yeah. You never know. You never know. So, what advice would you have for someone who is looking to put together their first deal like this and qualifying a tenant buyer?
Yeah, so first I'd recommend, making a list or getting a list. Like you said, you have that checklist. So kind of figure out your criteria.
Mhm.
This is what I'm gonna check. And then, you just kind of got to start doing it. So put up an ad. You can even put up a generic ad looking for tenant buyers if you don't have a house yet. And really, you just got to start talking to them. And
Mhm.
um, there's only so many questions that they're going to ask about the rent to own program. So once
Right.
you do it a handful of times, you'll know your FAQ list or whatever, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
I would put up my ad, start getting responses, and I'd start a spreadsheet, a Word document, whatever you want, and just kind of keep, whenever someone asks you a question, write down the question and the answer.
Yep.
And maybe I know the answer, but maybe I don't. I got to go to my Facebook group
Hmm.
and ask the community. They'll tell me, okay, now it's on there,
Yep.
and just keep going and going.
Often people's first roadblock in that they're concerned about putting an ad out there or making a phone call or because they're afraid that the person's going to ask them a question that they don't know the answer to. How did how did you overcome that?
That was a skill I had previously developed, I guess, is saying like, great question. I will find out and get back to you.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't think I've ever had anybody been like, well, you should know this right now.
Right.
Like, what is this?
Yeah.
That simply doesn't happen. People are like, okay, okay. And maybe you do lose that sale because that person doesn't have confidence or whatever, but that's just that one person. Then you're gonna
Hmm.
go figure out the answer, come back, and you'll know it for next time. So
Yep. Yeah. Any other sage advice for someone who's literally they've got a property and they want to find a great tenant buyer?
yeah, I mean, just start advertising and get people in the door. One thing I've realized is there's two parts when you find a tenant buyer, right? They need to want that house and they need to meet your qualification criteria. So you need to sell them on a rent to own and make them desire a rent to own, but you also have to make sure they are going to be a good fit for your program.
Hmm.
I really tried to balance that, really tried to make sure I was okay. Is this person really a good fit? And in the meantime, I would kind of lose them because they're like, what's this rent to own? I think it seems okay, but maybe, well, I don't know. And I was like, well, what's your income? Like 54,000, 55,000. So my advice out of all that would be practice your pitch and selling people on the benefits of the rent to own, make them desire the rent to own
Hmm.
because it's the right situation for them and will really help them, and qualify them after.
Hmm.
You can always, it might be a little bit of a tough conversation to turn someone down after, but if they don't want it, they're never even going to make it to the next step anyways.
Exactly.
Yeah, no problem, Ken.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Dave. Really appreciate your insights to, your experience, and it's really helpful for everyone here. We're going to jump into next steps here, and then right after that, I'm going to share about this Co-llab Mastermind. So the next steps here are very simple. The first one, you've heard me say it before, don't sweat the details. There's going to be lots of questions in your head, and that is okay. Don't not make steps forward just because you don't have all the details figured out. Okay, so don't sweat the details. Second one is know that you can do this, right? Dave didn't have real estate and tenant work in his background. He did something completely different. You've heard me tell my story. I'm a C minus student in high school, and I'm putting these deals together. And thirdly, what's next? Well, first of all, here are specifically 2 YouTube videos that talk to marketing to find tenants, right? So you've got questions about, where do you post, all that sort of stuff. It's in that one. And then finding great tenant buyers. I actually walk you through how I pre-qualify, getting them pre-approved for essentially what the banks are looking for. And then I also put this one up here, 5 things that you need to know to put together a lease option. That's just very important. So that's the first thing that you can do. The second thing is that you can join our rent-own real estate investing group on Facebook. It's a free open group, and it's for dialogue for people who are interested in this. And thirdly is to take action. Right. So before I talked about at the top of this call, I talked about, writing stuff down. And if there was one thing that you're like, oh yes, that's my next step, go do that right after this video. Like, do it. I'm serious. Even if you're uncomfortable with it, take steps for it. 2 things will happen. One, you will make progress in your real estate investing career. Secondly, you'll feel like $1 million. When I know I've got to do something, it's on a sticky note and I write it down. I got to do this. And I put it there. And then at the end of the day, I realize I didn't do that. I'll put it on tomorrow's pile. Right. And then next day comes and I've got this sticky note. I'll put it on tomorrow's pile. That eats away at my self-confidence. I don't know if you felt that. I feel it. But then when I tackle this and I get it done, because there's some reason why I'm avoiding this sticky note of doing the action. There's some reason. Most of the time, I'm not conscious of what it is, but inside I know that there's something a reason why I don't want to do that. But when I do it, I feel like $1 million. I'm like, yes, I can go to the next step, or I can conquer anything. Like, seriously, when you take action, that's when your self-confidence grows, when your self-esteem grows. Like I said before, you're going to make mistakes. That's okay. You learn from that. You get back up, you do it again, you learn from that mistake, and then you get it right the next time. Maybe it takes a couple times to get it right. That's okay. Keep going until you get it right. Don't quit. So that's super important, to take action. The last thing that I want to share with you before I let you go is this Co-llab. So Co-llab is a new mastermind group that I'm putting together. And basically, the reason why I'm putting this together is imagine a mastermind that's exclusively on helping real estate investors grow and scale, right? This isn't about putting together your first deal. It's about getting together to build a set of stairs to get you to that next level. And it's also for action takers. So often what we find in many groups is that people will come in and then they just don't take action. And that's not good for anybody, because we want to take action together. We want to hold each other accountable and take action so that we get results. This mastermind is going to focus on no money down strategies, lease options, and other creative strategies that we're talking about all during these 6 weeks here at the end of summer. Talking about generating cash flow, acquire more properties with little to no money down. And I'm talking about without the banks, right? Last week, Dave talked about, we're at 10 plus properties, no banks. They're generating cash flow. They're getting money up front. They're getting money when they close, all without using the banks. So this community, this mastermind, is going to be people together doing that together and showing each other how to do it. We're going to be aligned towards the same goal: profit, right? Growth, freedom, and happiness. Yes, when we talk about helping families get into home ownership, we want to help people. Now, you might be the type that, this is a one-off. You want to just help your friends or your family get into it, that's awesome. But if you want to run it as a business where you do it multiple times, you have to generate profit. You have to grow that way. And so really the more profit you generate, the more you can pour back in your business, the more people you can help. And then it can grow exponentially there. So when I think about my vision board and what do I want to achieve, I've got to make it profitable. Otherwise, I'm not in business and I can't achieve this stuff. I want to grow. You know, I've got freedom. I set my schedule, setting your schedule, travel when you want, whatever that freedom looks like to you. That's just so important. And happiness. What brings you joy? So it's going to be run by me and a couple other coaches, which I'm really excited. I can't talk about that yet. The whole mastermind, it's a 6-week mastermind that's focused on implementation and collaboration, not just, it's going to be a group of people, cameras on, where we're collaborating with each other and we're investing in each other. And then we're going off and taking action. So that's about it, I'm going to say, for today. If you're interested in that, join the wait list. Just go to creativeinvestor.ca and join the wait list. And when information comes out next week, you will be the first to know, because it's limited. This first group is limited to 10 seats in the mastermind. Sign up for that. Just by sign up, you're not saying that you're fully committed or anything like that. You're just saying that you're interested. And that's awesome. So going back to what I said before, if you learned one thing tonight, take action and go do it tonight. I will see you next week when we talk about how to take a underperforming property that's losing money, turn it into a profitable cash flowing property using the lease option strategy.